Okay, let's make a painting. So here we go. I've got a loose little version right here. This is just a little test one. And we're going to do something that's a little bit different looking. You can see different composition. But this right here is a California poppy. It is the state flower. And just having California on the mind right now, it seemed like this would be a good thing to sketch. So we're going to do something. Here's kind of a much bigger version. You can kind of see we're going to have kind of poppies sort of in the background, which are they're one of the first flowers that comes back after a fire. There's a bunch of different versions of them, but there's a fire poppy, but they're all kind of versions of this California poppy. So without further ado, let's jump right in. I've got a bit of an outline. I just made a quick sketch with the pen right here. So if you have the sketch, awesome. You are ahead of the curve. If you are just jumping in right now, that's also totally fine. And you can quickly sketch this out. The line isn't going to matter too much. This technically had super dark lines in it, but you can't even tell. So, all right. I am just stalling because I am always scared of that first line. But let's jump into it. Okay, got a bunch of colors. Basically, whatever you got is what you need. I don't know like the names of the colors too well, but we got yellow, red, brown. You'll notice I don't have an orange, which is kind of hard. So we're gonna paint some orange flowers, but we'll just mix yellow and red together, and that'll make a nice orange. So let's get in here with a bunch of yellow. Gonna mix up a little bit of yellow here, and we're gonna kind of paint along with everything. So the the darker colors are going to kind of hide it. So you don't need to be too worried. You can basically just do a bunch of yellow right here. Don't be too worried about those lines. We're going to kind of get the center of these flowers in particular because we really want those nice and bright, and even the edges as well. So just piece by piece, moving forward with all of this. Maybe even a bit on these edges as well. We'll kind of hide a lot of this with a nice blue sky afterwards, but for right now, lots of yellow just on those petals. I've actually seen a lot of these before. I've done a lot of running in California, and just like, oh my gosh, they are just like these bright flowers, especially in the morning. It's like they are like glow sticks or something. It's incredible. It's slightly different. This is really just to kind of give you a sense. We have also all of these kind of moving into the distance as well. So I'm going to put a bunch of yellow just to kind of get those in place. The watercolor is we're going to kind of come in and cover up a lot of this. So it's okay to be a little messier now, to not quite know what you're doing, not quite know where you're going, as long as you kind of cover the right stuff. Perfect. There we go. We're basically done. Now there's a couple more steps, I think, but here's a few of them. Next, if you want, we could add a little bit of that orange in there just to kind of give a little bit of that look. But I think what we should actually do is start with a little bit of this green, because we kind of want this green to exist before we cover it up with these darker colors. So I'm actually going to jump in and grab a little bit of some green. You can also mix yellow and blue if you want to make your own green, but I got a little bit of sap green right here, and pretty watery, pretty loose. I'm going to avoid these flowers, but these ones I can kind of pull down a little bit if I want. So I can just add a little bit of green down here. Oh, that was way too wet. That's all right. Okay, those flowers are now green. Maybe avoid those flowers. I take it back. I made a mistake. But definitely down here, we definitely want these things green, like this. These little flowers kind of going down, kind of this stem, maybe a little bit this one as well. And if you made a little bit of a mistake, like absolutely greening out your entire flower system, you can fix it really fast, and I'll show you how to do that. You just grab a little bit of tissue paper or a paper towel, and you just come in and go like that. Boom. Just blotting out some of that. We can come back in there and add a little bit of yellow later on. Watercolor is real forgiving, which it doesn't always feel like it, because it kind of feels like it's going all over the place, but it'll all work out, you'll see. And actually, I might even want to have a pen here. There is going to be a bit of a hillside. I guess I didn't really put that in the outline. You don't really need it. We'll add it in with watercolor, but I'll just put it there just so we kind of get a sense how that's all going to work out. While right there, maybe add a tiny bit more of that yellow. Nothing like doing a live watercolor to really show just how all over the place this medium is. But I think that's kind of the fun place. Like oils or acrylic, they kind of sit where you put them. But watercolor is alive. Okay, wonderful. That is looking great. Everything is mostly locked down. And so the next step is going to be kind of oranging up a few things. And that's going to be kind of interesting, especially as a lot of this is still pretty wet. We're going to kind of bounce to and fro. So we want the this to dry before we can add the background, and the background's got to be dry before we can add the sky, and the sky's got to be dry before we can add the mountain. So a little bit chaotic, but it's just like a 3D game of chess here, or maybe not even 3D. It's just a game of chess. It's a 2D game of chess. 3D chess would be like painting 2 or 3 of these at once. All right, so we got a bunch right there, and now it's gonna be time to add a little bit of the orange to some of these flowers. Fire poppies are called fire poppies. Well, California poppies. There's a version called a fire poppy as well, but they're called that because they often come back. They're one of the first flowers to come back after a fire, but also they are just this bright, bright, bright shade, which is interesting because I feel like they almost look like fire themselves. It's just kind of that next phase, and just thinking of what's going on, how scary it is. It's nice to remember that in the spring these will grow. So we're going to kind of paint that kind of whole feeling into this one flower, which is just broken down into a couple little brush strokes. That make it sound scary. It's not. We're just going to add a little bit of orange. You saw I added a bit of red to my yellow, orange, blam, colors. How about that? And you see I've got like a little petal right here. I'm going to kind of leave the edge of that mostly yellow, actually. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to add the back, maybe like this. You can kind of think of all watercolors almost like three bears, right? You got Papa Bear, Baby Bear, Mama Bear, or like, big, medium, little, whatever you want to think of it. We have light, medium, and dark. And so this is kind of the medium layer. We added most of our light layers are all in. This is kind of the medium layer, and we're going to add more dark layers later. But because of that, we want to stick by these lines just a little bit. This layer, we don't want to overlap too much of this line. Same right here. I'm leaving just a touch of that edge of the flower right there, just because I don't want to overlap fully. And if it feels too like sharp, or like too abrupt, we can add water in later to kind of fix a lot of that. You'll see. Well, actually, you'll see right now. I'll show you. You can just add like a touch of water. Boom. Sharp line, soft line. Blam. If you're feeling really brave, we could kind of work on this other edge too. Make a bit more orange for myself. We could add a tiny bit up here. And we're going to avoid these little, I think they're called stamens, but basically that middle of the flower. It's kind of very bright, very yellow. We want that to remain as almost pure as possible, as light as we can. And we're going to paint all of the rest kind of around it. So we got a little bit here, a little bit there, almost like making those little ruffles within the petal, something like that. And then you can add in that water if you want, kind of to soften up those edges. Just like that. Honestly, you could probably even do this and have everything mix into itself. Flowers are so forgiving. It's amazing. You really can't do a flower wrong. We're going to have tons and tons of different paintings of flowers, and each of them is going to look very different, but like all great. We're going to go do something kind of similar down here. I'm just going to use my finger and see if everything's pretty dry so I don't mix this flower into the background, which will happen inevitably, and that's fine. Bit more orange. If you have your own orange, that is fine too. BYOO. Bring your own orange. And then doing the same thing, trying to kind of avoid the middle. And that's going to kind of carve that out. It's going to look like we basically put that yellow on top, even though we're actually just leaving it behind. A little bit right there, a little bit right here. Okay, perfect. A little bit of water, soften up a few of those edges for fun. Oh, this is looking great. If we want to get really wild, we can add in the Papa Bear, the main darks. We can come back up here and add just like a touch of purple or something. We really don't need too much, but a touch of purple. Let's see if that's purple. Yep. It's always hard to tell with those pigments. Just a touch of purple while it's still wet could be perfect. If you're a little cautious, wait until this dries, because it's hard to know exactly what, and you don't want the full flower purple. But if I just add like a touch of purple, something like this right here, while it's still wet, it should kind of work its way back up those petals, which could look pretty cool. but also it's way simpler when it's dry, a whole lot less flowing. Maybe something like that. It doesn't need it, but it could look neat. Try a little bit more in here. Boom, boom, boom. It's all just contrast, really. I think that that's gonna do just fine. Like I said, a million ways to paint flowers. You can't really get them wrong, except if you don't paint flowers. That's how you get them wrong. The world needs more flowers, and these ones are particularly excellent. All right, great. So now that our flowers are kind of wet, they're gonna dry. It's gonna dry a little bit lighter, and we're gonna kind of leave them alone here until we have those final little details. And now I'm just gonna see how wet everything else is. Just touching. Looks like it's dry-ish enough. So the next kind of steps, we've got our sky, we've got our mountains, we've got this little hillside, and then we've got all of these down here, which is a little confusing because these flowers are going to create a lot of shade and things like that. But like, how do we add all of that together? And actually, this stem right here that we have a little bit green, that's basically done. We basically just need to put dark stuff all the way around it, and that's how we get those stems. He said there's even a few here that are just like single black lines. Well, we'll paint in kind of these other colors, and then we'll make the darker ones around it, and that's what'll get those nice lines. So first, let's add just a touch of orange. These flowers right now are all kind of various shades of yellow and green, thanks to me going a little too fast. So I'm gonna make a touch more orange here, and I'm just gonna add to the bottom of a lot of these flowers just a little bit of orange. The further away something is, the less complex you need to make it. So don't worry if it's just kind of the loose impression of a flower. That's enough. That's plenty. Something like that is going to do just fine. Beautiful. That's lovely. If you want, you can even add some kind of orange right going up to the top of this hilltop. That's when all those flowers kind of bunch up, just like that. That's looking great. Just got to get that cat hair or whatever's on my painting off. Maybe you have a pet as well that inadvertently adds to your artwork one hair at a time. Perfect. We're going to kind of avoid the sky in these mountains because we really want this to dry. We don't want the sky to kind of blend into our flowers. So we're going to give that as much time as we can. But down here, let's start adding some slightly darker colors. We can add maybe a dark blue. We can add maybe a purple. I'm not too fervent on like the exact color, but I'm thinking kind of a dark blue that we can mix with our green. But I'm going to start with green because it's easy. Uh, when it comes to kind of scary brush strokes, I like to kind of start with the one that would have the least effect, just because it makes me feel more at ease. So I'm just going to add a little bit of this green down here, and I'm going to avoid this little stem like it's poison. We really don't want to cover that up. You can fix it with a paper towel, but if you don't have to, let's avoid that. Here we go. A little bit of green, just almost like just like a tracer, just to show where we are. And then we're going to come in with blue. But because we have that green in there, the blue is going to mix and do different stuff and be more dynamic than just blue. So here we go. We got our green looking lovely. And now I'm going to come in with maybe a bit of dark blue that I water down. Oh, that was purple. I can never tell the difference between colors. Like I really should just have them numbered or something. There we go. A little bit of blue. And let's just add a little bit here. I'll show you what this looks like. Whoa, that's bright. I'll show you how this looks like right here when you start to kind of outline around that stem. Look how that just pops out of the page. If this is acrylic, that'd be so much easier. If we were Bob Rossing it up right now, you just put a palette knife on this thing and go bloom, bam, stem, done. But we're not. We're doing watercolor because we're taking the hard road because we're martyrs, and that's what we're going to do. There we go. A little bit more of that blue. And then just a touch more, especially toward the base. As soon as you get a little bit close to that ground, everything gets darker, a little bit more shadowy, and we're just kind of carving out some of those leaves. If you didn't like the shape of them with your pen originally, now's your chance. You can make them whatever shape you want, whatever thickness. If you don't like one like this, boom, gone. Look at that, axed. Try this again, maybe over here. A little bit of blue, just working its way in. And now I can start to see this painting start to kind of come to life a little bit. This isn't from like any particular landscape, but I've done a lot of running in and around California, and it's just there's like these moments, especially in the spring, when you kind of hit all of that sort of flower. It's like the sea of color, and that's kind of what I'm trying to get. Is you see like the individual flower, but there's just so many of the rest. It's almost like they make this ocean of color, and that's kind of what we're painting right here. Lovely. Okay, so we got our blues. That's looking wonderful. If you want to add just like a spot of purple in there too, purple is a wonderful color for painting. Uh, one of my favorites to kind of add to stuff. It's almost like the perfect pairing, but it's also a nice contraster to anything yellow. So that's the other secret thing. So I might put just like a touch up here or something. This is really pretty watery purple. I'm just going just a just a touch up here, just a touch down there, just to have it in there because I kind of like it. Perfect. Something like that is looking swell. Okay, cool. We're gonna add a few more things in here just to really darken it up. So basically, there's a couple more stems. Obviously, all these flowers have stems, and when we add a bit of indigo later on, that's when those ones will really show up. So right now, I'm gonna leave that alone and probably just add this top bit. So we've got this little section up here, a little bit there, here, and here. Let's try out a little bit of that. If you need a smaller brush, that's totally fine. I'm using a size 8, maybe? I don't know. Does it say 8? No, it doesn't. Anyway, there's also smaller brushes and things like that, which are totally fair game. You can use whatever small brush you want, but I usually just kind of stick with one just to make it simple. Here we go. We're going to add same color combination, touch of green, then some blue, maybe some purple. So here we go. Touch of green right up here. And this is what's going to kind of highlight that flower. If you want, I'm just going to see my touch of green right there, and then I'm going to add some yellow or maybe orange if you still have it on your palette, just because like those flowers are just like omnipresent. Like when there's so many back there, they are just like an ocean, like I said. So I'm going to add a little bit of yellow back there, just to kind of as if that's an ocean of flowers. But then back to the green and working through all of this piece by piece. Oh, a little bit too wet. If you kind of dry things out just a little bit, or make sure there's not too much water on your brush, it kind of goes more where you want it to. Less of that fun mixing, but sometimes you need the paint to end up where you planned. And then of course, just a touch over here as well. Okay, now let's jump back into that blue. That's the mama bear. And actually, no, hold on, I'm mixing analogies now. It's like paint. You got to kind of keep it in one lane sometimes. Now we got our blue, and we're just adding a little bit right here just to show where that flower is. Give that nice hard edge right there. And then same right over here. Perfect. That's looking lovely. And you can see by kind of doing this style, we now have this real good 3D effect. This is a complex one. Maybe you're an expert at watercolor, maybe you're just stepping in, but we're kind of doing all the fancy steps pretty compressed here. So no matter how it is going, I'm hoping you're learning a ton, and also don't be afraid to try it again. This is all being recorded. You'll be able to check it out again, stop, pause, rewind, whatever you need next time. But just give it a go, because sometimes in the process of making mistakes, you learn so much more about a painting than you ever would have if it just went perfectly the first time. I'm going to add a tiny bit of purple right up here just because I love it. And then we're going to start working on that sky here in a second. Beautiful. Okay. Very, very cool. Okay, this is really coming to life. I really, really like where this is heading. The next piece, and you can see this is kind of the test one. I was a lot more orange in this. I'm really liking how the yellow is really kind of coming through. It's a little bit brighter, but this is, I mean, honestly, I could have painted the exact same thing and they might have turned out totally differently. It's amazing how different watercolor is. Okay, next we've got this nice sky. I'm just gonna test the edges, see if everything is still pretty dry. Feels pretty dry, but if it's not, I'm gonna make it dry. Here's a little bit of paper towel just to keep stuff from bleeding into the sky. I like my flowers on the ground where they belong. And there we go. That should help. So with the sky, I'm going to use this cerulean blue, which is kind of that light sky blue. But there's also manganese. There's cerulean blue deep. There's like a bunch of different sky blues. Or you can kind of just do a light version of a dark blue, which adds some more water. But I'm going to add a little bit of this really dark right on the edge. You see I got 2 cups of water here. One is kind of what I rinse, and the other is like gonna stay real clean because of that. And so I really want to kind of get my most blue right there. And I'm just gonna really add a really hard kind of line of very blue sky. And then I'll use just clean water to kind of pull it all down. And that's gonna give me that nice kind of California gradient. There we go. Perfect. Might even keep on working down over a little bit right there, just like that. Okay, now rinse and watch this. When you add just a touch of this blue right here, just mixes in with that nice clean water, and boom, it starts to kind of pull itself down. It's going to give us this kind of cool look. You could also paint right to the edge if you want. You'll notice I'm kind of going through this mountain almost, and that's because if you paint right up to the edge, you kind of get this almost like bordering effect. It like creates like a hard edge for some reason. Whenever you have like these hard stops in watercolor, it makes this interesting thing. But if you kind of, it's like running. If you run through the line, run through that finish line, go all the way through, then you're not going to slow down at all. So that allows this watercolor to kind of keep that gradient, because the sky doesn't stop at the mountains. At least I don't think so. I keep on climbing mountains. I haven't seen where it stops. I'm pretty sure it keeps on going behind, but I could be wrong. That's perfect. With skies, it might look simple. We want to keep it simple. Just the simpler, the quicker, especially if you can do it all in one piece. That just allows you to keep this really no hard edge, just nice, simple sky. So I'm loving where that's going. We have a few more details here. We gotta wait till this is dry before we can kind of add some of those in. But up here in our little flowers, while we're kind of waiting, these could use a couple more details. I'm thinking I might actually switch. No, I'm tempted to switch to the real small brush. I'm going to stick with this one. There's a trick you can do if you want, where say we're going to add a little bit of purple in, which is I think what I'm going to do. I can just get a bunch of purple, and you can kind of just dry out your brush mostly, and then you just have a little bit on the brush, but it does make things really sharp. It's a nice sharp brush because of that. So I can use that and just add, almost like I'm just sort of like highlighting like these little almost like McDonald's M's, but just kind of gives it a little bit more 3D-ness. And do some of the same in here, just adding almost like the little shadowy bits in between these very yellow stamens. I think they're stamens. Gosh, I don't know. If there's any botanist on there who's going to call me out, please let all of us know. But we got a little bit right there. That's looking great. California poppies do have this real bright orange. So if you want, you can add a touch of that right now. Here's a little bit of red, a little bit of yellow. And this right here is going to be pretty thick, because I really want a lot of that pigment. And you don't want to make the whole thing orange. Like if you make the entire poppy orange, like bright orange, for some reason it loses that luster. So we kind of want just like an accent. So that's what I'm going to be adding right here. Oh, it looks like it's still wet. And I'm just adding just an accent of that little orange right there. You see? Well, that's a bad example because it kind of flowed into the rest. But same down here, maybe just an accent, just something really simple, but just enough to kind of get it going. And then same up here, just a hint almost. That's what it takes. There we go. And then I can kind of smooth out some of those edges if I need with some plain water. If you like how your flower turned out and you don't want to change it, don't. I often say the first half of my painting is to make it, and the second half is to ruin it, because usually I find something, I love it. It's like, this is perfect. And then I just keep on adding until I don't love it anymore. And that's the only way I know how to stop. So learning to know what you like and sticking with it is a skill. And if you can use that, that is great. Okay, now just a touch more, maybe purple down here. I'm just thinking just like some shadowy things, but honestly, I don't even think I need this. We're just adding it because I can't stop myself. Okay, there we go. Now I'm stopping myself. That is a good looking flower, I tell you what. All right. Also, if you have any questions about any of this stuff, I have made a lot of mistakes. I mean, I love watercolor. Here's even another version here where it's just so much watercolor is doing it once, twice, 3 times, whether it's the same painting or not. Maybe this is your test and then you try another flowers, but you kind of build up this bank of learned experience and mistakes, and it makes things stronger. Hardship makes you cleverer, it makes you more resilient, it makes you able to kind of figure out problems in a different way. And with watercolor, that comes in the form of these little mistakes. So super excited to be able to share those as well. I might not be able to tell you what to do, but I can tell you usually what not to do. So if you have any questions, definitely drop those in the comments or connect with us on Trailbound Sketches on Instagram or on our website or any real way. And send us we have a PO box. You can send us a letter or a watercolor. How about that? Would be even cooler. But right now, the mistake I'm trying not to make is to rush into the sky, because a lot of times I'll just jump in and be like, okay, we're ready to go. And I'll put a big old thing of purple or something. And then boom, the sky is now purple. So I'm kind of trying to wait until that's just dry enough. It's getting close. But the watercolor is kind of a waiting game. You can speed it up if you do things like this. Sometimes you don't even notice the difference, but it's just kind of pulling off a tiny bit of extra moisture, or a hair dryer, or just living in a warm, dry place. That helps. I'm up here in Anchorage, Alaska, not the driest. But what we're going to do is we're going to add these mountains right here. And you can kind of see if I can focus on that for you. Oh, there we go. So with these mountains, we're going to try to get something called a bloom. And you can kind of see there's this brown section, and then there's this dark section up here. Could be shadows, could be a burn, could be whatever you got. This is 3 colors. It's brown, purple, and indigo. And that is what I kind of want to try to make. And so almost we need to go over a game plan here, because it's going to happen just that fast. It's 3 brush strokes, really. So you almost want to leave the colors almost totally separate until they connect. And then they do the magic. They get this really cool effect. Everything looks great. And it looks totally flawless and on purpose, even though it's just a chaotic mess to actually make. So once you're ready, we're going to kind of mix up a few of those. We've got our brown, our purple, and our indigo. And we're going to get kind of close to this mountain right here. These are all still pretty wet. So I'm actually going to leave the tiniest little bitty outline of white. And that's going to create this like kind of beautiful halo. Some things don't have it, like this right here. Oh, probably want to actually see these things. Some things don't have it, like this right here. This is just, pure dark onto the orange. That's totally fine. If the little halo doesn't work out, you can always just add a little bit more, kind of cut into that, and that'll also look good. But I'm just going to add the tiniest little bit of an outline, I think, which almost looks like the you know the halo of light around a mountain or person or flower, if you got that backlight going on. So here we go. We got a little bit of purple, got a little bit of brown. I'm just adding some water here to those, and that's going to kind of get them ready. And then we got a little bit of indigo. Indigo is basically black. It's like a slightly more purpley black. It's great. I love the color. I use it instead of black. Black is fine and all, but like indigo is just so much more complex. But here we go. So we're going to start with kind of a blop of brown, something like this. Hoping things are dry. Yeah, they're dry enough. So we start with a blop of brown, something like that right there. Maybe even another blop of brown. And we're going to kind of start with these colors, and then the other colors are going to kind of take them over. So that's why we're starting with basically the most vulnerable color, because the purple is darker than the brown and the indigo is darker than the purple. So we got just a touch right there. And then probably the indigo is going to be last. So we'll do a bit of purple. Moving fast, because like I said, this part is just chaos, but a lot of fun. A little bit of purple down here. I think I'm actually going to water that down just a touch. This is when the painting's really going to come to life, but it's kind of the make or break moment a little bit, because I really don't want to accidentally just get enveloped by the flower or pull anything into the mountains. There we go. Just a touch of purple right down here. And just a little bit of working down the edge. A little bit more right here. Boom. I do feel like a lot of the mountains, Purple Mountain Majesties and things like that, they talk about purple. You don't see it in photographs too often, but it's there. It's so there. Whenever you're out in these mountains, it's the purples. They're in the shadows. They're in the forest. They're really in all of a mountain. And I love to add a bit, especially when you have this lovely contrast to something like that. Now it's time for the indigo. And then you are 95% of the way there once we put this brush stroke in. So here we go. A little bit of indigo. Like I said, it's dark. I'm gonna be a little careful, because if I make it too dark, it'll kind of take over the whole painting. That's what happens with contrast. So I'm gonna make sure it's a little bit watery, and Try not to get it consumed by the flower. If that does happen, if it does kind of get sucked up into the flower, that's okay. There's things we can do. I'll probably end up showing you them because I am just a little bit shaky here. And we got a little bit on the edge there. We're just kind of pulling the flower to life. Just like that. Maybe a little bit over here. If it seems real dark, that's okay too, because watercolor is going to dry lighter than you put it on. It's like a river rock in the, when it's wet, it looks very different than when it's dry. A little bit down here as well. Oh, that's a bad example because I love river rocks when they're wet. Like they're always kind of disappointing when they dry out. So you can put them in like a little bowl of water or something. Just leave them nice and pretty. But you can't really do that with watercolor because you put like a glaze or something over it. Maybe even a touch up here. Kind of that almost dry feel, but then that's what's so amazing about places like California is you get these cycles of life and then also pretty intense conditions, especially like what we're seeing right now. Super scary, but also knowing that, just how resilient the people and the landscapes and the communities are there. Like the flower, those are going to be the first things to kind of pop back up and thrive. But oof, it is scary. Okay, so we are basically there. There's a couple things we're going to add, just a few little kind of stems and things down here. I think it's going to look really great, but this is looking pretty cool. Let me know how yours are going right now. Might take a little bit more time, might take a little bit more drying. Maybe you had to start again because your flower decided that the grass is too tempting and kind of flowed into it. But this is looking pretty good to me so far. We're just going to add just a couple little last things, and that's kind of where everything comes together. So here we go. Well, do we go? Let's see. Testing it out, testing it out. That's still pretty wet. That's all right. Let's see what happens. Uncertainty can be kind of fun. A little bit of indigo here, watering it down just a touch. This is like this shadowy part below just this whole like crowd of flowers. It's like going to a concert, but of flora. Okay, and what I need to do is just highlight a stem. Maybe you have drawn them out here, like in pen, in which case that's easy. Just pick one side and then make sure there's a little bit more. But you can also make new ones. So like, watch this. Here is a flower stem. Voila. And you can kind of make almost like these parallel lines, something like that and something like this. Maybe there's one more here. And then just come in with some water. I wouldn't make everything like totally uniform and all over the place. I'd probably pick just a handful. But then you come into some water and just fade in those sides. Just like that, leaving that one bit just real intentional, and you kind of get this cool little stem effect. Same with something down here. Try just a few more of these, but if you kind of like the look you got, this isn't necessary. Sometimes this is like a little bit much, actually. So if you like how things are looking, the courage to stop is underused. Here we go. Here's one of the stems that I kind of drew in with a line. I'm just going to add a little bit right there. Kind of parallel that. Same with this one. Parallel that. And then I'll be just adding a little bit of water to kind of smooth out some of those other edges. You could also come in, if you don't want to add pure water, you can add like another slightly dark color. Maybe a blue or something like that. That is looking lovely. Just a couple of these little lines here. And we almost have our little California poppy field finished. Okay. Voila. If you want, you can kind of match a tiny bit of the background in the flower itself. I don't think they have these like very dark centers, but with shadows, if you want, you could add just a touch. I'm talking like the smallest amount. We're talking the opposite of the version of like a little light in the eye. It's like a little dark in the center of the flower. So if you want, you can add just like a touch here, maybe a touch there, and this will kind of hold the viewer. The point of contrast, whatever the most dark next to the most light, that is what the eye will look at first. And so if right under these you just add a tiny bit of real dark shadow or something, then that's going to create a real beautiful just contrast, tie into the background. Still pretty amazing to see just how different this versus this versus this is, all made the same day. This one's just a little bit longer and bigger, but you can kind of dress it up and dress it down however you need. If you want to make a much longer version, just extend your mountains out. Here you go. If you want to kind of see what this one turned out, you can just extend those mountains, extend those flowers. You can add more of them, however you want to do it, or just the flower itself. You lose the rest. That's totally fine as well. But there's no one way to do it because these flowers, even though there's millions of them, and especially after large fires or disasters, that's when they really kind of they're one of the first things that come back. There will be millions more, and so every single one of those is going to be so unique. So while this dries, if there's any questions, let me know now. Chances are you are not the only one, but also how cool is it the way and the difference that these turned out as well. And looks like everybody is an expert, so that is also totally fine. If you do have any questions, you can definitely send them over to Trailbound Sketches on Instagram or on the website. And then, if you do get a chance, definitely hit like and subscribe on this video, as that allows us to be able to do more like it because more people see it. So, if you thought this was cool and you want more people to see it, the algorithms like it when people see it and make some noise on the video itself. But this is one of those things that, for me, with these kind of paintings, I often feel just so helpless when I hear about big things, like whether they're natural disasters or just like these huge, enormous events that just uproot people's lives. Not that like a painting of anything or even a flower will change any of that, but it's it's almost like as if painting can make me feel guilty. But the truth is painting is one of the things that kind of grounds me. And it's almost like I can send my thoughts to a place through the paper. It's like a prayer on a sheet of watercolor paper almost. And I think that even though there are amazingly capable people and organizations, and if you've been able to donate, there's a lot of people doing some amazing stuff to help, and they'll need more help in so many ways. But just sending those thoughts or even a flower in that direction can kind of give some appreciation, a little bit of hope for the world. So I just so appreciate everybody painting along a little bit. It makes me feel not quite so alone in that, and also hopefully we can help others feel not quite so alone. But now, no matter how you feel, there's a nice little pretty flower in front of you as well. And if you don't think it's not so nice and pretty, and maybe things went all over the place, give it another try. It's amazing what painting a little flower will teach you, and the next thing you paint might be just twice as beautiful as you ever could have imagined because of it. So thank you so much, and I cannot wait to paint more of this stuff later. Yes, and also a quick thank you to a man who painted for us for the very first time. We also love to see your paintings, so definitely send those our way. It gets me so excited to see all the different variations.